Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be focusing on shoulder and neck. A little bit of the relationship of the shoulders with the hips, but not a super big dive on that. Mainly want to get some nice, good shoulder, neck mobility related to thoracic spine. So let's get started. So we're going to start on our back. Starting with our crocodile breath, and then we're going to work into our turtle breath. So making nice big C shapes with our hands. Hands are going to go below the rib cage and above the hip bone in that nice meaty space of the abdominal wall. I want to make sure that we're not pressing onto our bone, but we're on just that nice soft tissue. Thumbs are pressing into the low back musculature. Index fingers are pressing lightly into the abdominal musculature, and the palms are pressing into the side body. And we're going to get a nice light squeeze of our hands, and on our inhale, I want to imagine that we are trying to expand the abdominal wall like a balloon, like we're breathing like a crocodile. Nice inhale, feel that expansion out and away in all directions. As we exhale, feel that navel draw into your spine, full expression of that breath. And at the same time, allow your hands to cinch down a little bit on the abdominal walls so that you have some resistance for your inhale breath to move into. And we'll get a good 5, 6 deep breaths. I want to try to see with each inhale, see if you can expand the abdominal walls a little bigger. Can you blow up your balloon a little wider? As we get to 5 or 6 breaths, I now want to lift our feet up in the air, bringing our knees into our chest. If it's hard to hold the legs up, you are welcome to use a chair or a couch to place your feet on top of to help them rest. If you're able to hold your legs up without resting them or without placing them up on a wall, I want to work up to this point if possible, this point of not using the chair. So heels and balls of feet are lightly touching. The knees are going to be shoulder width apart, and we are going to put hands on knees and push actively away in order to get the elbows as straight as possible. At the same time, draw the knees in, pull the knees into your hands. See if you can feel that your core musculature get engaged. I want to feel that pressure through the core with that nice push and pull. And we're going to come right back into our crocodile breath, bringing that breath in nice and wide, blowing up the balloon. And then as you exhale, we're going to do a light Kegel and a light squeeze, like you're holding your pee and holding your poo at the same time. On the next inhale, allow that breath to move all the way down into the pelvic floor and expand out and away into that light Kegel. Exhale, drawing navel in and light Kegel. Inhale. See if you can fill that balloon out through the side abdominal walls and down into the pelvic floor. See if you can feel the pelvic floor kind of get some nice length moving into that Kegel. It's like you're expanding that Kegel on the inhale. On the exhale, you're squeezing into it. Again, I want to maintain active push through the hands, active pull, so that we have this pressure in the core at the same time that we are expanding our abdominal wall down into our pelvic floor. Again, 5 to 6 breaths, and then we can relax our hands and let our feet come softly to the floor. And from here, We're going to very slowly come up to a sit. I want to make sure that we're not lightheaded or dizzy, and we're going to slowly make our way up to standing. If you are feeling light and dizzy, then stay on the floor, stay seated until you feel that dizziness recede. From the stand, we're going to start with bowls of soup. So I want to spread the hands as wide as possible, and we're going to extend and reach out and away. I like to imagine that we're kind of stretch Armstrong. We're trying to reach and extend our fingers out towards the wall, starting with the palms up. And we're going to work on long arm spirals up to the shoulder socket. I want to feel the long arm bone of the humerus spinning within the socket of the shoulder as much as possible. We're going to start one arm at a time, spiraling palm from face up to palm down and beyond as far as you can go without raising up the shoulder blade. I don't want the shoulder blade to round over the shoulder, so keep that shoulder in place. How far can you spiral? Just up to the shoulder socket. And then open that palm back up. How far can you spiral it in the opposite direction? And then switch to the other side. Start slow with your spiral. I want to make sure that the shoulder is not clunky or painful. And I want to see how smooth does your right shoulder internally spiral and then externally spiral, and how smooth does the left shoulder internally spiral and externally spiral. As we're going back and forth, we can start to combine our tensions. As I internally spiral my right hand, I am actively externally spiraling the left. And then when I go in the opposite direction, the same thing. I want to maintain tension through both sides. Keep the hands spread as wide as you can. Some things that we can notice that might be different on the one side compared to the other. You might find that you have tension within the elbow, the forearm, wrist, or hand that might be tighter on one side compared to the other. I want to take note of that because that's going to be relevant to things that are going on in the shoulder and the neck. We're going to continue to turn into our spiral. I want to start to go a little further internally now and allow that shoulder blade to start to round up over the top. It's going to start to give us a little twist in our upper back and spine as we move from side to side. Now we kind of get to see as we internally spiral how far will that shoulder blade round over. At the same time, the opposite hand is opening up towards the ceiling and beyond. And go ahead and relax and shake out the arms. And now we're going to grab our staff. We're going to start with a nice shoulder width grip of the staff. And this is where I want to imagine we're trying to bend or break the staff into two. And I want that bend to happen at the wrist and at the elbow. So the elbows are going to spiral up. And I also want to feel it at the shoulder blades. As the elbows spiral up, the shoulder blades are depressing down our back, like they're moving into our hips. So I want to keep that tension throughout. We're going to start with the staff low, and we're going to come back and reestablish our breath, and we're going to get a little pelvic tilt work. So a nice inhale into the abdominal wall, filling up that nice balloon. On the exhale, drawing navel all the way into the spine. As you inhale and inflate the belly, allow your pelvis to turn down towards the floor so that you get a little sway in your back. Our belly starts to protrude forward. And then exhale, draw the navel in and scoop the tailbone underneath. Feel that scoop. You should feel a little bit of engagement into your abdominal core. Inhale, we're letting the pelvis go in the opposite direction. Nice sway in the back. I want to make sure we are avoiding any kind of pinch or pain in the low back as we go through this movement. So be aware of how the low back is feeling. And then on the next inhale, as you exhale and actively scoop, we're going to draw the elbows up towards the ears and squeeze back. Inhale, let the elbows come forward lightly as we let the belly protrude forward and sway in the back. Exhale, scoop actively as we draw back. What I want to try to get here is a nice flat rib down through our core into our pelvis. I want to avoid having a big sway in our back as we bring the staff back. So when the staff's forward, we can have sway in our back. As the staff draws back, I'm scooping and keeping that rib cage down. I don't want to get really hyperextended in my back. And we'll do 10 nice slow breaths. If the arms get tired and fatigued, it's okay to drop them down, shake them out a little bit, give them a little rest, and then reestablish our position. After 10, I want to find light tension of the elbows coming back. We're not going all the way back, but we're going to bring the elbows to the ears just lightly into tension and keep the pelvis scooped underneath. From here, we're going to elevate shoulders, reaching up to the ceiling, feeling the shoulder blades come up to the ears, and then drawing the shoulder blades down and back like you're trying to move them into your back pocket. Exhale as you press up. Inhale as you draw down. As you pull the elbows down, the shoulder blades down, make sure that you're not bending your elbows. I want the elbows to actively be reaching to the ceiling even as you're depressing the shoulder blades down. That can feel a little counterintuitive if it's new. On the next reach, as we reach the shoulder blades up, we're going to keep them up, and now we're going to come back to our drawing elbows back, but we're doing so with those shoulders nice and elevated up to the ears. As you draw back, exhale, scooping the pelvis. Inhale, again, pelvis can kind of go back into that tilt forward. Exhale, scoop. With the shoulder blades elevated, we should get a little bit more range of motion of bringing our elbows back, unless there's some tightness, tension, some kind of shoulder discomfort, in which case I want you to talk to me about that in a consultation. We'll go ahead and drop the shoulders down, arms down. We're going to move the staff behind the body. I want to have palms facing backwards. We're continuing to bend the staff, but I want to bend it away from the body. So we're still trying to break the staff in two. Elbow pits are still spiraling forward. And I want to feel the shoulder blades draw down the back like we're moving them into the back pockets, and feel your chest open up lightly towards the ceiling. From here, as we inhale and then exhale, on our exhale, we're lifting our elbows up towards the ceiling. Inhale, we're dropping the elbows down lightly. Exhale, nice lift. Try to keep your head tall. I don't want to crane the neck forward. So try to remain as nice and tall through the spine as you can as you lift. And with each lift, we can continue to work to bend the staff or spiral the arms like we're trying to break the staff. If you continue to try to spiral those elbow pits forward actively as you lift, you should also feel some nice opening of the chest. So lifting elbows, continue to actively bend the staff and see if you can feel your chest kind of open up towards the ceiling at that high point. We're then going to flip our palms opposite direction. So palms are now facing forward. but continuing to bend the staff away from the body, continuing to spiral the elbow pits forward. Everything else is going to be the same. So nice inhale into the belly, exhale, navel to spine as you lift the elbows up to the ceiling. Inhale, let the elbows soften. And with each one, see if you can slowly squeeze higher without forcing it and without going into pain. Again, working that nice spiral through the elbows. See if you can feel the chest open up and lift as you lift the elbows. It does not need to be a huge move. We don't want to force it. That little bit more tension should start to open up the front of the chest a little bit more. We'll go ahead and let the arms relax. We're going to go with a nice wide grip on our staff, and this is where we're going to see how far we can move that staff all the way through from front of the hips to the back of the hips. I want to go slow on this, and I really want to pay attention to how smooth and comfortable this feels through the shoulders, especially that in the shoulder socket. And if there's any kind of pain, I want you to stop before you get into beyond a level 2, which is slight discomfort. So moving lightly into tension, I do not want to force this movement. So we're continuing to get nice breath and just slowly seeing how far can we bring our arms up and back. Wherever you get into that light tension without pain, you're bringing it all the way back forward. If you're able to go all the way through and bring that all the way back to the back hip, then great. Again, I want to make sure this is a smooth movement. I don't want it to be clunky. I want to avoid also walking one side through and then the other side through. So both shoulders are either able to go through this range of motion smoothly at the same time, or you go to the point in which they are limited and they don't go any further. Then we're going to go ahead and set the staff to the side, and we're going to drop all the way down to the floor and coming into our quadruped. So since we're working shoulders, I want to come in the set, we're going to assess wrists, we're going to do a little bit of foot mobility. I want to recognize that anything that's going on in the shoulders is going to show up at the wrist. So if you are feeling tightness in one shoulder more so than the other, I'm willing to put a wager down that you're going to feel tightness in that same side wrist. So we're going to come out and spread hands as wide as possible, grounding palms and extending elbows actively without locking them. And from here, we're coming right back into that breath. Breathing in, filling up the abdominal wall like a balloon. On our exhale, we're going to rock lightly forward, loading into the wrist space. Inhale, letting that weight come back. Exhale, we're lightly rocking forward. I want to make sure that we are not pushing into pain at the wrist, and noticing how does the right wrist feel in relationship to the left wrist. Is one side stiffer, tighter, achier, more restricted? Is it painful? I want to make sure we are not pushing into pain. I have some discomfort in my right wrist. My right wrist and hand are a little bit swollen compared to the left side. This is something I've been dealing with for a few weeks related to my right shoulder. So I'm going soft and easy, and I am not forcing it. We're doing 5 up to 10 gentle reps, and I want to move at the speed of our breath. Nice slow inhale as we rock back. Nice slow exhale as we load into the wrists. Next, we're going to turn fingers out to the side, and we're going to get our side-to-side glide. This is where I want to feel a nice push from one palm and pull into the other palm. I want this to be a nice active push-pull side to side. And I want to feel that push and pull in my shoulder blades, in the scapula, especially in the relationship of the shoulder blade with the ribs. I want to feel the shoulder blade hugging the rib in both directions as I'm pushing away and as I'm pulling in. See if you can feel that relationship between an active palm on the floor and an active shoulder blade on your rib cage. Again, kind of notice the difference right side to left side. Again, more than likely, whatever side is already tight and stiff is going to be showing up on all of these movements. Next, we're going to spiral the fingers so they face the knees, so facing back towards your feet. The closer the hands come to the knees, the less intense this will be. The further out we come, the more intense. I don't want this to be super intense. Keeping the palms grounded and loaded. We're now inhaling as we're rocking forward, and we're exhaling as we let our hips sink back to the heels. Again, keep the palms grounded as you sit back so that you feel that nice load on the forearm space. Inhale, coming back forward. Exhale as you sink hips to heels. I want to notice the difference right side to left side on this as well. Although this particular position, it's not uncommon for the more dominant side hand to feel thicker and denser than or forearm space to feel denser and thicker than the non-dominant side. So that's fairly normative. Once we get 5 to 10 reps, we're going to flip the palms upside down to the back side. This position can be uncomfortable if it's new. I want to pay attention to the elbow space first. I want to notice if there is any stretch within the elbows as we work going into extension. So back side of the palms are down. We're inhaling as we allow our chest to drop towards the floor, and then pressing into the back of the hands lightly to extend the elbows. I want to reach into the floor and see how straight can I get my elbows. And is there a stretch in one or both elbows? If there is a stretch, then great. That is what I want to play with. I want to kind of move into that juicy nature of that stretch without forcing it. So kind of moving into it and then out of it. Inhale as we soften, exhale as we extend. And see if that stretch loosens up a little bit and allows you to get a little bit more extension in the elbows. If you don't have a stretch and you're able to extend the elbows fully with no stretch at all, then we can come back to rocking back. Inhaling forward, exhale as we allow our hips to sink back to hips. Again, making sure that we're not going into a forceful or stressful position on the wrists. We'll take a little break, roll the wrists out. We've got a couple more things we're going to do on the wrists, but I want to make sure not loading the wrists too much, so give them a little bit of flow back into them. We're going to come back to spreading fingers wide, grounding palms, and now I want to look at elbow spirals, basically doing our bowls of soup that we started on, but doing so with our hands locked down to the floor. So I don't want the hands to slide around. I want them to stay really sticky to the ground, and we're going to focus on our elbow pits. So I want to allow the elbow pits to turn and face as far back towards the feet as you can, and then spiraling the elbow pits as far forward as you can. And as we go back and forth through this spiral, I want to start to notice the relationship between the direction we're spiraling our elbows and the position of our shoulder blades. So as we spiral the elbow pits internally, facing them inward, the shoulder blade should naturally want to kind of round forward to where we get a little rounding of our upper back, kind of like a cat position. As we spiral the elbow pits forward, feel how the shoulder blades want to move down the rib cage towards our back pockets. Again, similar to the movements we were doing with our staff work. I want to start to accentuate that. So as we spiral elbows internally, start to press lightly into the floor, allow the shoulder blades to reach forward, and see if you can feel some stretch in between the shoulder blades around the spine in your upper back. As we spiral the elbow pits forward and you feel the shoulder blades drop down towards your hips, feel your chest open up down towards the floor. We can bring our breath sink into this as well. So as we're spiraling our elbow pits internally, I want to exhale, drawing the navel into the spine, and we can even add in a little bit of a scoop of our pelvis. As we spiral the elbow pits forward, we're inhaling, filling up that belly, and feel the belly kind of move down towards the floor. This is going to take us into our cat-cow work. So as we exhale, we're spiraling elbows internally, drawing the navel in and scooping. So we're getting a nice rounding of both upper back all the way down to lower back. As we inhale, elbow pits are spiraling out or forward. Belly's dropping to the floor, pelvis is turning down towards the floor. We're getting into our nice big sway in the back cat position. And with each one, let's see if we can move a little bit further into each range. So as we spiral in, scoop, really press up, see how much stretch can you feel between shoulder blades, all the way down into the low back without pain or pinch. And on the inhale, as we spiral out and away, how much can you feel that belly open up to the floor? Can you get a nice big sway in the back? Can you feel your chest open up towards the floor as well? And we're going to come off our wrists and we're going to roll the hands out a little bit. We're going to change our position. Take a little bit of load off the wrist, at least for a moment, at least from that position. We're going to get into our nice wide active V-sit. So spreading the legs wide as you can. I want to be active with this. So active means we're going to actively reach the back of the knees down into the floor. I want to try to push down as much as possible. The more you actively push those knees down, the more you're going to feel your quads tighten up. So I want to maintain that. And the other active position is pulling the tops of your foot back, like you're trying to fold your foot back onto your shins. So I want to actively pull the feet, actively reach the knees down. Hands can come down behind the hips in order to support, and we can even spiral those elbows out and away in order to get a nice open, lifted chest. I want to try to be on our sits bones as much as possible. If you're struggling with finding the sits bones, this particular movement drill will help to open up your hips to get you into this position a little bit more, but it may just take a little bit of time. We want to focus on our kneecaps. We're going to work the same. This is basically bowls of soup, but we're doing it for our hips. The bowls of soup are working our rotator cuff muscles of our shoulders. Our V-sit position is going to be working our rotator cuff muscles of our hips. So looking at the knees, we're going to see how far can we turn the knees and spiral them out and away. And then how far can we internally spiral them. Again, actively reaching the knees down to the floor, actively pulling the foot back towards the shin. And I want to exhale in both directions. So As we spiral the knees out, we are exhaling. As we bring the knees into to the upright position, we're inhaling, and then as we turn the knees inward, we're exhaling. So we're inhaling at center, and we are exhaling at end range in both directions. I want to pay attention, I want to keep our focus on moving from the knees, because that's going to get us more movement deep in the ball of the hip, that joint of the hip. If we focus on our feet, I can get a lot more foot movement to make it appear that I'm getting a lot of internal and external rotation of my hip, but I'm really moving my foot. So I want to look at the kneecap. And you can compare right knee and left knee in both directions. When you spiral your knees out, how far does the right knee go compared to the left knee? When you spiral the knees in, how far do they go in comparison? Does one go further in one direction or the other direction? You may find that one hip is a lot tighter in both directions compared to the other side, or you may find that they're paired in an interesting way, that one is tighter in external while the other is tighter in internal. And those are really important kind of things to take notice of. And with each one, see if you can squeeze into the end range and get a little bit more range of motion. The more actively you're reaching the knees down and pulling the feet back, the more you're going to get this movement deep into the hip socket, which is where we want to get into. We're now going to let that rest. We're going to still remain active in the knees and active through the feet. But now I want to get into a little bit of fold work in order to get some length out of the back line of the legs. So we're going to take a nice inhale, filling up our belly. On the exhale, as we draw navel to spine, we're going to softly allow both hands to reach forward. As we inhale, we're letting it all come right back up. This is where I like to imagine that my hands are a wave moving up a beach. On the exhale, and on the inhale, we're receding back into the ocean. Notice how this feels on the back of the legs, especially right leg compared to left leg. Also notice, how does it feel as you reach? Are you able to keep both hands even, or does one hand want to reach a little further? And is that something that you're feeling in your low back? That's another good assessment point. As you're starting to feel this movement open up a little bit, if you're able to start to reach a little bit further without force and without stress and strain, then we're going to start to deviate off center and start moving a little bit side to side. However, when I move side to side, I still want to reach with both hands perfectly square and even. So I want to turn my chest square and reach both hands together. I don't want one hand reaching further than the other hand. This is going to give us some assessment points on both the back of the legs as well as the low back. So as you're reaching to the left, does it feel tighter in either the left hamstring or in the right side low back compared to when you reach to the right side? Does one side feel a little different than the other? And as we're doing this, we can continue to start to open up how far out to the side we're going. We can start to reach both hands to the heels. Again, I'm keeping the knees actively reaching down, and I'm actively pulling the feet back towards the shins. My right leg is a little bit tighter than my left leg. If you're feeling a different intention on one side compared to the other, see if you can notice where that tension is at. Is it in the calf, down and below the knee? Is it more directly behind the knee, or is it higher up in the back of the thigh? Those are going to be useful assessment points to kind of get an idea of where things are restricted and why they are restricted. Is it more of a foot issue? Is it more of a hip issue? We'll go ahead and relax our legs. We're going to now bring our, come into our shin box position. So I'm starting out in my left side shin box. My left knee is facing forward. This is the side I'm kind of leaning to. So my left hand is going to come down to my side. I want to spiral that elbow out and away so that it lifts my chest up. And I want to maintain this nice, stable position of the shoulders. I don't want to move a whole lot in my shoulders right now. I don't want to rotate up here. I want to stay nice and fixed and still. We're going to start with our back hip first. And we're going to just do a little bit of knee openers. Lifting that back knee up towards the ceiling, slow and lightly. Going easy at first. We're going to exhale as we lift. Inhale as we let it back down. And with each one, we're seeing if we can slowly squeeze a little bit more into it without forcing it, and definitely without going into pain. And we're just going to do 3 to 5 reps on this. Once we get to our last one, I'm going to stay on this side, and we're going to continue to focus on the back hip. But now I want to work on our range of motion of hip. We're going to inhale and allow that back hip to drop back to see, can it sit down and touch the floor? If it can touch the floor, great. If it does not touch the floor, that's great too. It does not have to touch the floor. As we, to lift on our exhale, we're going to scoop our tailbone forward. So I really want to lift from the tailbone as if I'm scooping that tailbone as far forward as I can. And I want to get it to lift as high off the floor as possible. I want to see if we can get into as much hip extension as we can. So from your 12th rib, I want this to be a fairly straight line through the front of the hip all the way down to the knee. If there's a lot of bend in the hip, this will not be a straight line. It means we're not getting full extension. So I want to scoop into it. See if you feel some stretch through the front of the hip. Inhale, we're letting that hip all the way back down towards the floor. Exhale, we're scooping. And I want to pay attention to how much range of motion do you have? How far does your hip travel from the floor into that scoop position? Because I want to pay attention to how much range of motion do we have on the right side compared to the left side. After about 5 of those, we're going to switch across to the other side. So now right side shin box. Excuse me. Grounding palm. Spiraling the elbow. Again, grounded shoulder. And we're going to start with that back knee, doing our knee openers. So nice inhale into the belly, exhale, drawing navel to spine as we lightly, slowly lift that back knee up. Inhale, letting it soften to the floor. Exhale, squeezing up towards the ceiling. Again, going easy, non-forceful. And we're seeing if we can get a little bit more range out of each one without moving into pain or discomfort. Notice if this side feels tighter or more restricted than the other side. After 5 reps, allow the knee to soften, and we're now going to focus on that back hip, seeing if it will drop down to the floor. Again, if it touches the floor or doesn't touch the floor is not a big deal. What is a big deal if it's different on the right side compared to the left side. That's something I want to take a notice of, because that's showing there's some imbalance within the hips. So that's going to be something that's relevant. But if one side the hips are off the ground and it's the same on the other side, or both hips touch the ground, That's balance, so both of those are a good, I view that as a good thing. We're not too worried about it. Can we get better hip mobility if they're not touching the floor? Absolutely. But balance is the more important quality that I'm looking for. So from that inhale with the hip touching, on the exhale, we're scooping that tailbone forward and seeing if we can get that full extension of the hip. This is a big assessment point, that in how far we go forward, is it tighter on one side compared to the other? Are you not able to go as far forward? Hip extension means glute activation, and if you cannot get into full hip extension, then that means you cannot get full glute activation, and that is functionally going to be something that is significant, especially if it's different on one side compared to the other, because it means one side has better function in the glutes than the other side. That can become a problem in our mechanics, and so we want to notice that, because we can work on that. We can get improvements in that. Again, each one, see if you can squeeze into it just a little bit more. Once we get 5, even up to 10 reps on both sides, we're going to shin box back across to the other side. And now we're going to get into our folds. With the folds, I want to start working back and forth. So we're going to go from one side to the other. And we have a couple of different alternate options for our transition from one side shin box to the other. The first one being a simple windshield wiper. Hands come down behind us, opening up both knees together, keeping the feet in contact with the floor till we get all the way to the other side, and then we can lift our hands so that we're facing the other side, doing the same thing coming back. I want to go slow on this because I want to feel the quality of that movement in the hip socket. I want to see how smooth does that hip travel, and is it the same on the right side and the left side. The other option is our thread through. Thread through, we're lifting up that back leg. We are spiraling it all the way around and then threading it underneath, and then lifting the front leg, spiraling it all the way back into so we're in the opposite side shin box. So those are our two options for our transitions. From here, I want to use the shin as our reaching point, I want to stay square through the shin. So we're going to keep the shin as square to your chest as possible. Taking a nice inhale to inflate the belly, exhale, drawing navel into spine, and we're going to reach both hands evenly through that shin, and we are only reaching where we can get both hands even. I don't want one hand going further than the other. Again, I want to be able to assess the quality of movement one side to the other, so I need to have some ability to do it the same way. This is my way of making sure I'm doing it identically on each side so that I can notice if there's a discrepancy from one side to the other. So as we exhale, light reach, inhale, bringing it all the way back up, and then we're going to transition across to the other side and do the same thing. Again, shin square to the chest. Nice big inhale. As we exhale, reaching both hands even. And from here, we're going to go back and forth and see if we can get a little bit more range in how far we're able to reach both hands, and noticing the difference of how it feels on the left side compared to the right side. Are you able to reach a little further in one direction? Do you find that your hands one hand wants to reach further on one side compared to the other side? Again, that's going to be some indication of the low back as well as hips. I want to make sure that we are not forcing the end range, that we're playing within the range of motion that feels comfortable. As you go back and forth, you should notice that you get a little bit more mobility, that you're able to get a little further, a little deeper into the position, making sure that we are not forcing it. Once you get about 5 or so reps on each side, we're going to start to open up our shin box. So opening up our shin box is letting that knee slide back a little bit more, making our shin box wider. At this point, I'm less concerned about reaching through the shin. I'm just going to kind of reach where my body feels comfortable, exploring how all the different, exploring the position without forcing it. But I don't need to follow that shin quite as much. And as we go back and forth, we can slowly open up the hips a little bit more, as long as we don't go to a point of pain, discomfort, or force. If you are doing the thread through as your transition, we can start to work on keeping that leg off the floor and reaching back further and further with body control. This can become a little bit of a core exercise. The more you can keep that leg off the floor as you lift and spiral it around to find the position you want behind you before you get into your reach. That's going to help develop a little bit of core control with the movement. It's not a major thing, but we can take advantage of any that we can get along the way. And I also think it just kind of makes the movement feel really smooth, enjoyable, and fun, especially when it turns into a nice flow where you can get into your reach at the same time that you, with your hands, as you reach back with your legs. If you find that that's really challenging, then I would not focus on it. We're just seeing where that leg rests, where you're able to get your fold. We're just finding the juicy nature of the stretch. All right. We're now going to shift into our inverted position. Grounding palms at hips or slightly behind. We're going to start with our arm spiral again, basically bowls of soup, but doing it from a different position. So nice grounded palms. We're going to work on spiraling the elbows out and away, and then allowing the elbows to spiral in towards the body. And notice again how the spiraling of the elbows changes the position of our shoulder blades. So as we spiral out and away, shoulder blades will slide back and down the ribs like we're putting them into the back pocket, which means the chest opens up and we can lift the sternum up towards the ceiling. As we spiral the elbows in, the shoulders round, and we can get a nice rounding in the upper back, and we can even, again, feel that stretch between the shoulder blades. We're going to bring our breath into this as well. As we spiral the elbows out, we're inhaling, filling up the abdominal wall. As we spiral elbows in, we're exhaling, drawing the navel into the spine. And that's going to start to give us our scoop of our pelvis. So inhale, nice big spiral out and away. Feel the chest lift up towards the ceiling. Exhale, scoop the belly button in. Feel the low back scoop, rounding shoulders. See if you can feel a light stretch from low back all the way up into the shoulders. On your next inhale, as we spiral out and away, I want to stay tall. At this point, we can cross our legs. So arms are pressed down, elbows are spiraled out, nice lifted sternum, opened up chest. And now we're going to get into our neck mobility. So if you've been experiencing any tension on one side, shoulder, elbow, wrist, my bet is that you got some tension on that same side neck. You probably got a little bit on the other side, but it's probably going to be pretty primary on that same side. So we're going to get into that a little bit, starting by checking our blind spots. Inhale as we're facing center. We're going to exhale as we slowly look over our right shoulder. Light squeeze into it, making sure it's not painful. Inhale as we bring it back to center, and then exhale as we look over our left shoulder. Squeezing into it lightly. As we're turning, I want to look with my eyeballs. I want to see how far can I see over my shoulders. I also want to turn from my chin. I want to see how far can I move my chin over the edge of my shoulder. Can I get it over the crest of my shoulder at the chin? By moving from the chin will help prevent us from tilting at the forehead. So I want to avoid our head tilting. I want to keep a nice tall spine. So reaching from that chin should help get into a little bit deeper neck musculature. Notice how far are you able to get your chin over your left shoulder, squeezing into it lightly without going into pain, compared to your right shoulder. Is one side tighter, more restricted? Does one side have more or less range of motion than the other? And again, how does that relate to what you've already felt in the shoulders with the shoulder work we've done so far? Next, we'll come back to center, and we're going to start working our tilt and lift. So light tilt of the head. I don't want to drop my ear all the way down to my shoulder. So this is just a light tilt. But then opposite ear, we're imagining that we're trying to reach that ear to touch the ceiling. At the same time that I'm lifting that ear, I want to feel my hand ground and reach into the floor so that we create some light traction in the side of the neck. Inhale, we're coming back to center. Exhale, we're going to the other side. Light tilt, lift as we press. Inhale to center. Exhale as you lift. Again, notice how does this feel on the left side compared to the right side. If you've had some shoulder tightness, wrist or elbow tightness, more than likely you're feeling it's a little tighter on that side of the neck. But I also really want to notice what's going on the other side. So I have some discomfort, some swelling in my wrist. I have tightness on the right side of my neck that is greater than it is on the left side. But what's more interesting is on my right side, I feel like I have decent control, like I actually have neurology. It's tight, I can't go far, but I can access it. When I reach with the left, I really struggle on even feeling that lift of the ear. Like there's a lack of neurological control. It feels less capable, even though it's not very tight and restricted. So one side I have better access to control, the other side feels a little unstable. But one side is tighter. It's not always going to be congruent in a way that necessarily makes sense. So I want to kind of notice all of these little different assessment points because they can be beneficial and relevant. And the last for the neck, I want to get into some shallow neck rolls. We're going to lightly let our head drop down towards our chest. And then from here, letting our right ear move to the right shoulder. Then we're going to let our gaze softly come up to the ceiling, and then the left ear to the left shoulder, and then chin back down to chest. I want to stay very shallow to start with to make sure that there's no pain. As we establish non-painful range of motion, we can slowly start to let our circle get a little bit bigger. And if you feel some crackling in the neck, if it is not painful, I want to think about kind of going in and de-crackling the crackle. I kind of want to get in there and move into it. If it is painful, then you need to back off. I do not want my neck mobility to be painful at all. I want to keep it low on the discomfort. I don't like going above a 1 or 2 in the neck mobility work. In level 1, level 2 is slight discomfort. Notice where you feel the tightest on the circle. Most of my tightness is on this right side of the neck, especially as I'm moving away from the right shoulder. Once you get 5 to 10 reps, we're going to start back at the center, and now we're going to reverse directions. And I want to reverse directions keeping it shallow again. So I don't want to go big. I want to start shallow. So neck, chin to chest, left ear to left shoulder, light gaze up to the ceiling, right ear to right shoulder, and then chin back down to chest. And then from there, once we establish non-painful range, we can slowly start to let that circle get bigger. And again, notice where it feels tightest in this direction. You may be surprised that even though it feels like the same movement pattern going in one direction compared to the other, that where you feel the tightness and tension might be very distinctly different in one direction than the other. We're going to go ahead and relax the arms, and now we're going to slowly come up to stand. We're going to get into a nice wide stance with both feet facing forward. And we're going to get into a little bit of our loaded, to what I call like step under progressions, but we're only going to do a couple of ranges of this. I want to make sure feet are perfectly facing forward. I don't want the feet to turn out to the side. And from here, we're just going to slowly drop one hip, sitting into one hip like we're trying to sit into our heel. Inhale, we're coming all the way back up. Exhale, sitting into the opposite heel. As we're doing this movement, I don't want my hips to slide forward. I want my hips to slide back. If my hips slide back, my knee should stay over my foot. If my hips slide forward, my knee is going to slide over my toes. So I want to sit back and feel the weight of my hips load into the heels. But I want to do so without letting my feet, I don't want my feet to rock up. I don't want to lose balance. As we're going side to side, I want to maintain our tripod feet on the side we're moving away from. So I don't want that foot to roll as I'm coming over to the side. If anything, I want to reach all the way across to the outside of my foot and intentionally load the ball of the pinky down to the floor. So I don't want to lose that contact. I don't want it to roll up. See if you can maintain that pressure to the outside of the foot on the opposite leg as you sink into your same-sided hip. As we slowly go side to side, we're seeing if we can sit a little deeper on each one without going into pain or obviously without losing our balance. Notice how does this feel, especially in the inner thighs on one side compared to the other. Is one side tighter, more restricted? Are you not able to go as far? Are you not able to sit as deep on one side as you can on the other? Good. And from here, we're going to go ahead and come all the way back down to the floor, laying on our back. We're going to make our big C shapes of our hands, placing thumbs in the back, index fingers in the front. Hands are going below the ribs and above the hip bone, again on the abdominal wall, only touching meat and not touching bone. And bringing back in our crocodile breath. Nice inhale, feel that expansion out and away in all directions. Exhale, navel into chest or to spine, and squeeze your hands in a little tighter. And then inhale and feel the balloon press into the index fingers in the front, into the thumbs in the rear, and the palms pressing out to the side. Can you feel that balloon inflate in all directions? And can you get it to inflate a little bit more with each inhale? We'll go ahead and allow our hands to relax down to our side. Feel the shoulders soften down to the floor. We're going to continue with that same breath. We just don't need our hands there. Filling up the abdominal wall with the inhale. Exhale, navel into spine. And now we can start to allow that inhale breath to move up into our ribs. Feel that same expansion in the ribs, moving into the chest, out to the side, and into the upper back. On the inhale, exhale, start to feel tension leave the body and just melt down into the floor. As you bring that next inhale into the chest, into the ribs, you can let it come all the way up into the shoulders and into the neck. Again, inhale, filling into tension lightly. And then on exhale, allowing that tension to rinse off the body. And we'll get another 2, 3 or more breaths. Breathing into that tension and continuing to let that tension go. And when you're ready, we're going to open our eyes and very slowly get up. Again, I want to make sure that we're not lightheaded and dizzy as we go from laying on our back, coming up to sit or stand. So take your time.